So in the book, Helping Schoolchildren Cope with Anger, a cognitive behavioral intervention book by Jim Larson and John E Lochman, we learned that there's two types of aggression. One, emotionally aroused aggression, which is to inflict harm and pain upon the source of the anger. Hostile aggression, which we might call hot, short-tempered, reactive, frustrated, angry. Then we have then we have instrumental aggression, which is motivated to acquire something. It's its potential for an external reward. It's like a proactive aggression. Aggression behavior has been conceptualized as being in part due to an inability to regulate the emotional responses to anger-producing stimuli. When the individuals perceive themselves as endangered or threatened, they have common physiological responses at two levels and can have two kinds of anger. A, thalamus. The thalamus signals the neocortex. The thalamus is like the filtering switchboard, and the neocortex is this newer, higher brain sections. Once a threat is perceived, which processes the perceived causes and possible responses to the threat. One, the result can be deliberate, calculated anger response, which is action of the amygdala on the adrenocortical branch of the nervous system. It's this general background state of action readiness, could last hours or days, can be stimulated by stress of all kinds. The amygdala is in the brain. It's more of like a reactive center, and the adrenocortical branch is adrenal, so like arousal. And number two, when someone is in this readiness state, even a minor trigger can produce highly intense anger responses. Anger can build on anger. Escalating anger can be a series of perceived provocations, each triggering further arousal, which then dissipates slowly. B, in addition to the first physiological response to perceived threat, the thalamus can also signal the amygdala and separate from collateral cortical processing. The amygdala can trigger increased heart rate, blood pressure, produce the rage response. I think I need another tissue. The limbic surge can release catecholamines. These are chemical messengers, and lead to an energy rush, which can last for a period of only a few minutes. Anger can develop very rapidly because of the initial limbic surge and can be overly manifest in cardiovascular activity, heart and blood. Highly aggressive boys display a sharp surge in heart rate following interpersonal provocation. Coercive family processes link with development of deviant social information processing patterns. So children who were physically maltreated upon angering parents were more likely to direct aggression by their angry. Okay, so children who were physically maltreated by angering parents were more likely to direct aggression towards peers who irritate them. The same kids displayed more deviant processing styles, less attention to relative cues. They displayed hostile attributional biases, basically attributing biases to others of hostility, and show poor solution generating skills. There are 6 steps involved with processing social information. 1, encoding relevant social cues. 2, interpreting those cues. 3, identifying social goals. 4, generating possible solutions to the perceived problem. And 5, evaluating these solutions. 6, enacting the chosen response. Aggressive children have been found to have difficulties in all of these stages. So cognitive distortions. 1, they recall, so this is encoding relevant social cues. They recall fewer relevant cues about events, base interpretations of events on fewer cues, selectively attend to hostile rather than neutral cues, and recall the most recent cues in sequence, selective inattention to earlier presented cues. A child learns to pay attention to patterns, interaction patterns, and social cues that are emotionally similar to cues that he or she has previously experienced. 2, we have here interpreting those cues. So hostile attributional bias is where they excessively infer others are acting toward them in a provocative and hostile manner in live interactions or hypothetical vignettes, and underperceive their own aggression or overperceive others' aggression. Relationships, interactions are ongoing and reciprocal, thus aggressive children's difficulties can form a circular pattern, which is called a feedback loop, that's hard for them to extricate themselves from, and they tend to assign the responsibility for conflict to their peers rather than assuming their own responsibility. The deficiency in generating solutions, both quality and quantity, that includes recalling from memory. Number 4, generating possible solutions. So deficiency in generating solutions, both quality and quantity, that involves recalling from memory past coping with problem solving, because there's fewer verbal assertion solutions, fewer compromise solutions, more direct action solutions, and a greater number of help-seeking or adult intervention solutions, and more physically aggressive responses. Aggressive children generally evaluate aggressive behavior as less negative and more positive than other children. Children's beliefs about the utility of aggression and their ability to successfully enact tend to indicate whether they believe this behavior will help them achieve their desired goals. Goal. Aggressive children are less adept at enacting positive or pro-social interpersonal behavior. I want to say that again. Aggressive children are less adept at enacting positive or pro-social interpersonal behavior. I think I should say it a third time. Aggressive children are less adept at enacting positive or pro-social interpersonal behavior. There's something called schemas, which can be active or dormant. Active is when they active means often conscious and govern everyday behavior, while dormant is typically not in awareness and only emerge when individual is faced with specific events and stressors. Dormant schemas are in a state of chronic accessibility or state of potential activation, ready to be primed by minimal cues. Thus, an individual's beliefs and expectations, which emerge when the person is intensely stressed or aroused, may not be at all apparent when the individual is calm or non-aroused. Another thing about schemas is they can be compelling or non-compelling. Non-compelling schemas are not as strongly held by the person, could be given up easily, while compelling schemas are more strongly entrenched in the person's ways of thinking, promoting more filtering distortions of the person's perception of self and others. And compelling schemas can also lead individuals to make more rapid judgments about the presence of schema-related traits in their self and others, and often operate outside conscious awareness. Schemas, this is another comment about schemas, number 3. Schemas can be more or less permeable. Permeable schemas permit a person to alter his or her interpretations of events through successive approximations, which we might call constructive alternativism. So, a person with relatively permeable schemas can readily adapt his or her schemas to the specific situations and conditions the person encounters, thereby adding new elements of complexity. Schemas are typically more permeable and situational as individuals develop and have experiences in a number of situations. Relatively non-permeable schemas are preemptive, promote rigid black and white thinking, and likely create rigid expectations that are not open to change based on new information. Another thing about schemas is, one second, let's just see. Another thing about, and altering schemas is essentially conservative, as pre-existing beliefs are accepted over new ones, and self-centered because a person's own personal pre-existing beliefs are held more strongly than the new information provided by others. Non-permeable schemas are self-maintaining because they lead the individual to seek and recall information that's consistent with his or her conceptions of others and self. 4, schemas allow people to predict events, outcomes, and operate efficiently in social worlds by providing expectations of how others will react and how they'll be able to meet their own goals and needs. Schemas offer cognitive information processing. Cognitive products are actual cognitions, like thought forms or thoughts that individuals have in the present when dealing with events. Attributions, decisions, beliefs, I mentioned thoughts, recognition of stimuli. Cognitive operations are procedures that process information, whether it's attention, encoding, retrieval. They operate on the immediate stimuli and schemas to produce cognitive products. Cognitive structures are architecture of the cognitions in memory, structures by which information is organized and stored. These functional psychological mechanisms store information in both short and long-term memory, placing information in interconnecting categories and nodes. So I would like to say cognitive structures you could think of as the architecture, like a library's architecture, psychological mechanisms in the short and long-term memory. The operations and the cognition itself. Okay, cognitive propositions are they form the content within the cognitive structures and constitute the information that is actually stored. They include information from both semantic memory and general knowledge that's been acquired and learned, and episodic memory, which is personal information that has been gleaned through the person's experience in the world. Schematic propositions. Hey, the sun's coming out a little bit. Include information stored in memory about an individual's beliefs, general social goals, generalized expectations, and understanding of competence and self-worth. Children who have a history of noxious behavior in the classroom setting create an expectation on the part of the teacher that this behavior will continue. This creates a self-perpetuating mechanism in which the teacher assumes a particular child is responsible for any disruptive behavior and may automatically blame the child, even in questionable circumstances. The unfairly blamed child then responds in anger and quickly transforms him or herself to the victim, from victim to perpetrator, reinforcing the teacher's belief. This insight makes it essential that a teacher becomes an active, full partner in intervention, and it is ensured that they have a sense of ownership and effort from the outset, since too much is at stake in the lives of the children to rely on the train and hope model. Kids need visual reinforcement reminders often. For example, tokens that eventually bring rewards, like school supplies, pizza, movie night, gift certificates, etc. 2 strikes, such as 3 pencils in a cup or 3 checks near the name on the chalkboard or 3 pieces of tape on the floor. So we have tokens and strikes. Some children are so frightened that they'll be called on to speak that they'll misbehave to keep that possibility at bay. Assuring a child that he will not be pressured into participation unwillingly will often address this problem. Some children need a weekly report card to give to a favorite adult, an influential person who can be enthusiastically, vocally supportive of them being appropriately behaving in a group setting. The benefits of working on anger management is improvements in ability to generate competent solutions to social problems with peers and teachers and parents, higher rate of verbal assertion and compromise and bargaining strategies, a reduction in their rate of irrelevant problem solutions, indicating that they had improved their cause-effect reasoning in social situations, improvements in self-reports and in teacher reports of their social competence. Teachers rated children as being better able to calm down when upset, to recognize their feelings, to handle conflict in more adaptive ways, to cooperate with peers, and to interact in fair ways with peers. And the children perceive themselves as having become more competent in their interactions with peers and more accepted by peers. Parents reported that children's externalizing problem behaviors had declined, and teachers' ratings indicated that the children's social problems and attention problems had decreased. Teachers actually reported 85% of the children displayed at least some reduction in aggression and disruptive behaviors. Children better focusing attention in appropriate ways at home or at school. Academic achievement, the state-created measures showed upon assessment a 12% improvement at the 1-year follow-up in their rates of grade level achievement in math and reading. So I'm going to stop here, and I recommend the book, or even if not the book, just to look into for children, Helping Schoolchildren Cope with Anger. And you can watch this video more than once, share it if necessary, because you may not want to read an entire book, and I've given you a lot of information from it.